I went from literally 0 to 100. I've been blessed with clarity of thought. And the older you grow, the less things you actually think about. Part of upbringing, I think we are extremely competitive and we are very number driven. It took me a year to crack what I wanted to do with my life. You should ask yourself, what kind of person am I? Or rather, what kind of stuff really thrills me in life?
Joseph Radhik captures stories and moments. And at a point of time when people are at their most intense and the most vulnerable, when they're getting married. But more than that, he's someone who's deeply curious about so many other things and has perspectives and has been through a journey that's so interesting. So we tap into all of that and more. But before that, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. Right back with my chat with Joseph. I always think about what the first question is going to be with most guests.
Okay.
But with you, I actually want to start by saying, why stories? What is it about stories that fascinated you?
So funnily enough, stories is the name that my brother came up with. Okay. The initial name for Joseph for my wedding photography business, right? The official name was Joseph Radhik and Associates.
That is the most legal associate sounding name.
No, that was the idea. So when I started that, I mean, it was like, think of it like a office at the Suits or something, right? And the idea was that other photographers would join, and eventually, over time, it would become like a creative commune of sorts. But then Joshua came in, and his entire thing was that this needs to be, your name still needs to be on the wall, but this needs to be an independent business of its own.
Yeah.
Right? So Stories was entirely, it's the simplest name. And it's not some, there's some very, what is this, floral names in wedding photography. Very, very big words, right? But this is just, it's stories, right? And the root of it was that we realized when Joshua and I sat down, when we started the company, we were like, what makes us different? Or what is, more importantly, what is our biggest strength, right? The reason clients kept coming back to us back in the day, this is talking 10 years ago, right? Is yes, every wedding set has about 2,000 photos. The best photos are incredible, right? And that's what gains attention from social media. But that's not really what makes a bride or their family happy.
Yeah.
What makes them happy is the ability to relive their wedding through those images, right? And those images themselves individually can be mediocre. I mean, they're not, but they can be, right?
Yeah.
You don't remember a film for the incredible shots that it had. Yes, we all know that one, the school bus shot from The Dark Knight, right? But you don't remember the film because of that, right? It's icing on the cake. The cake itself is the story that it tells, right? And more often than not, we realize the best of our work is when you see the entire wedding that we have captured, and everyone else gets to see just piecemeal teasers, right? The real crux is the stories. And actually speaking, nobody gets to see those stories. Nobody gets to, because they're so private. No, and frankly, they would be irrelevant to you. As a third party person,
you won't get the context.
You won't get the context. You won't get the context of this. Marcy is laughing, for example, at a wedding, and I have a brilliant photo of her and her friends, or she's sitting with the bride's mother or something like that, right? They see that and they remember the conversation that they were happening. That's a story right there, right? But to the third party person, they'll be like, okay, how's the lighting in this? How's the composition? Nobody gives a shit. Okay, it's just the real deal is those chotu private stories. Okay, so there's also a very funny incident I can tell you. 2014, somebody walked into our office. It's very much like this in one of the mills in Lower Parel. Okay, and they're like, "Do you sell stories like you sell bedtime stories? What books do you sell?"
Technically, that person really thought that one through, right?
Yeah,
got to give them credit.
Full family walked in with kid and all because they're just walking around and they thought we sell books. But yeah, but I love the fact that Stories by Dash has, I think it's that logo has been repeated so many times across so many other wedding photography companies and brands. It's fine.
Yeah,
that's the dream.
I also think that weddings, and we don't talk about this enough, right? Is that a wedding is like a movie in the sense that you see everything around. And I like the
Yes.
fact you said the moments, because as I was thinking of this conversation before I came in, I was thinking about my own wedding, right? All the stuff that came before it, and there was enough drama, there was enough like madness, there was fun, there were moments, there were stories. And you recollect those instances, almost feels like a lifetime in those few days,
Correct.
because the amount. I'm like, I always say the bride and groom need that honeymoon because they need to get over what goes on for those 3 days. Like, oh my God, can I get away from these people and everything I've been through, in the good, in
Huh.
a good way, and in a
Yeah.
bad way as well.
Yeah.
And I feel it takes so much of that, and that really shows you people in their most raw light
Yes.
in a wedding.
Yes.
Would you say that's something which you see so often that you're like, okay, you see people in their rawest light?
A lot of people ask me, one of the questions I'm most often asked at interviews is, how is it to deal with celebs? Okay. And I give a very boring answer, which is the crux of this as well, right? I don't see celebs because when a celebrity is doing an ad shoot, for example, they're being a celebrity.
Yeah.
They're putting on that mask, they're being that persona, not the person,
Yeah.
right? But at their wedding,
Yeah.
thank God so far that the whatever 15, 20 odd celebrity weddings that I've shot, they're just being real people. They're doing exactly what you said. They know that it's the beginning of a new era, right? And they're marking it with this place where they can just be, right? Forgetting celebrities, even regular people, right? Are also for them, it's probably the only time in their lives for a few decades that they'll be meeting the entire bunch of people at their own wedding,
Yeah.
right? Uh, which also means it leads to a lot of pressure and stress. So rawness, not just in terms of joy, but also in terms of other
Oh yeah.
not so beautiful emotions. Okay. And so I'm constantly telling myself that as well. So like saying, if somebody is being rude to you or in any way, like if they're in any way unpleasant to you, it's because, I mean, look at what they're going through. And you have to keep reminding yourself that, because I can't put down my camera and say, okay, I'm done with this, I can't deal with this, it's too much, because dude, that day is not going to come back for them.
Yeah.
For me it will. I'll be shooting another wedding immediately later. But yeah, by far I have so many stories to tell, anecdotes to tell, from those kind of moments. But yeah, it's a very, very stressful event, but also a very joyful one.
Has that changed how you look at people in general? I do feel that you have a deeper understanding of just like human nature, human instincts, how people are, because you've been able to you're capturing the raw moments, right? So
Yeah.
you're like, I know what you
Yeah.
kind of sense what a person's going through because you're capturing it.
Yeah. Two things I can tell you here, actually. It's a very good question. It's a very good question because I seldom tend to question myself how my wedding photography career has affected my personality as a whole, right? But to be fair, it's I think the biggest strength it has given me is basically trying to question beyond what I see in front of me, right?
Yeah.
Because what everybody's like, I mean, if you are in a life situation where either unpleasant or happy or in a negotiation, even, right? It's nice to know that, nice to have that power, rather, to be able to say that, okay, if this person is going through the same things that I am, probably, right?
Yeah.
There are some weak points, there are some strong points, address them, and you'll find a solution, right? Which is amazing, right? Because as wedding photographers, we are the biggest skill that I have is observation, right? The photography comes later. This is observing not just with eyes but ears as well, listening, because I think the best moments I've shot are just pure split second reactions. A kiss that wasn't planned but just happens, and you cannot stage that. You can try, but you cannot stage that. And we are there's that uncanny valley that humans can identify immediately, right? That little bit of difference between completely real and slightly staged, right? That is the biggest observational skill I have. The other thing I was going to tell you is, a wedding photographer friend of mine quit wedding photography today, and he only does classes on communication and negotiation for billionaires, right? Because of everything that he's learned at weddings. So I think it's a superb life skill that you can walk away with.
That is so fascinating. And the two things, communication and negotiation,
Yes.
are they're a part of two sides of the same thing, but it's so interesting that's the choice that he made.
So communication is a superpower. Okay. If as a if as a wedding photographer, say I'm shooting an arranged marriage, a couple who's having an arranged marriage, they're awkward as hell together, right?
Yeah.
But there are always a few strings that I can pull to make them feel more comfortable, right? It's also a lot of shedding of ego from my end because I have to be literally malleable, right? I cannot be rigid. I cannot come in with this thing that you can only do this or I am only doing this. None of that shit, right? End of the day, I want to walk away with a portrait that has a little bit of emotion in it. For example, this is not about shooting candid moments, but portraiture, right?
Yeah.
So how do I make them emote? It's end of the day, it's communication. It's you could call it direction by keeping them in a spot,
Yeah.
but really getting people to think a certain way or to emote an emotion without asking them to emote it. If I ask you to smile, you're gonna give me the most Varun smile that you've grown up with, right? The
The most
fake ass
awkward
smile.
one ever.
Yeah, it may not be awkward. It might be sexy as hell. Pata nahi, you might have perfected it, but that's still not your smile, right? But what can I tell you? It's not necessarily a joke. Maybe you're not somebody who likes jokes. Do I have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, everything done? And then once you slowly master that, I don't think I'm even close, but maybe next 10 years, right? But if you do that, then dude, you can control any conversation. You're literally pulling strings to get people to feel a certain way. Can you get people to cry? Can you get them to blush? Can you get them to wince? All real nice emotions, which look really nice on with the camera.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's why I said negotiation, because that comes next, right? I mean, it becomes obvious.
You hit on a very interesting point, right? Is that especially in what you do, but I think in general in life, all of us are not comfortable in every scenario where we have to be. You assume everybody's comfortable having a conversation, comfortable getting a photo taken, comfortable even being in the spotlight. I know a lot of people say the thing I hated the most about my wedding was I was so much in focus that I just want to run away. Right? And there are so many of those aspects, and each of us need a different way to deal with it to cross that boundary of sorts. But I want to flip that to you, saying for you to become this malleable, what did it take for you to come to this state? Because were you naturally like this, or this is something that kind of
Shamelessly, I'll tell you, I was naturally like this. Okay, that's it's no, because I had to question myself.
Yeah.
So base level, when I started wedding photography back in 2010, the big question I had to answer to myself was not, will I be good at the photography aspect? Immodestly, I knew that I was going to be good at it because I'd been shooting with a camera for 10 years already. I was shooting the usual plants, sunsets, and insects. So, we all shoot, right? So that was no human beings at all. But I was freaking good at shooting those plants, sunsets, and insects. So I would be on the explore page of Flickr every week. Like every Sunday, I'd go shoot something, make something. When Flickr came to India, they printed one of my photos, like literally in a 20-foot hoarding, and placed it in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. And people sent me photos. I was working in Pune back then. So I was good at it. Shamelessly, I'll tell you, right? The big fear for me was, will I really like being around strangers having a good time? It's firstly, people can be obnoxious, right? But I think after 4 or 5 years of doing it, I then sat back, and this is a conversation with myself. I don't think I've articulated it to anyone. I think I articulated it to my sister. But growing up, like whether in engineering, whether in school, I would always gravitate to being part of many different groups at the same time. You know how in a class there are many cliques, right? I would be a little part of all of them. Never a full part of all of them.
Correct.
Okay.
I understand totally. I was exactly like that.
Yeah. So it's like being chameleon is the wrong word, right? But being malleable, essentially, right? I would pick up from all of them, which also meant that I would not really have like a deep friendship. I would have shallow friendships. I would have conversations with everyone, but never. And I think somehow that personality trait of mine has translated very well to weddings because I need to have shallow friendships 10 times a year. Right? I need to become really close to people for a limited period of time from the first Zoom call till the time the photos are delivered. Right? But really close, because I have to be part of their, like, a bride's breaking down because she's going to be like entering the mandap in a bit. The mom's there. The mom looks at me, and she looks at me almost like a friend, like I've known all her life, and she's like, Joe, can you help me with this, etc. And I'm like, how the hell did I get into this situation? Then it's clearly a mirror of who I am. was telling Devika the other day that Devika's my wife. It's kind of like I have relation. I'm like this train that keeps going. There are only few people who stay in the bogie. Very few people, but there are a lot of really nice people getting on and off.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't had very long
Hmm.
friendships.
Hmm.
That's the truth.
That's actually an interesting point. If you're a malleable person in friendships, my question was actually going to be that does that make it tougher for you to have long-lasting friendships?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm like going with the next wave, I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like Devika was laughing when we were planning our wedding. We dated for 5 years
Hmm.
and then we got married, right? So we were making a guest list. And we had a strict guest list limit. We could only do like I think 100 or 90 odd. She came up with 84 within no time.
Yeah.
I was finding it tough to get 5. Like my core family is 5, okay, but beyond that, fine.
Yeah.
She's like, Ray, we need to close to 100. Like, you need to get there at least. It's interesting because I know so many people, but I don't consider myself really close to anybody that I'll
Yeah.
invite them to my own wedding.
Hmm.
She was laughing also because I was like, and so I named a few people, and she's laughing because she's like, dude, the people I'm inviting I've known all my life.
Hmm.
And he's like, you've known this for like 3 years now, like why are you even calling us? Like, oh yeah. So anyway, so I think my B school friends turned up, but I think I find it difficult to sustain relationships other than those for family.
I think it's different for everybody, but I'm just taking my case, right? Is that if I think of myself during college, and you and I both done engineering, and I want to tap into engineering college for sure, it has to be a case. Have had friends from there, and even in engineering, I had like 2-3 different groups to be part of. In school, I had 2-3 different groups. I think, till 10th standard back in Kakinada was okay, one group, because the class was pretty small, like 20 people in a class, so 25 people, so we didn't really have that thing. But I'd say beyond that was always the case. But if you ask me today who are my closest friends, and I say this often, it's still a core set of people who I met in postgrad, and all of us came to Bombay together to work in the industry. That is my core group. You ask me to name, again, it's that 5-6 people, that will be the first list. And then it's a lot of, I know this person really well. I want to call them. I'm friends with them, but are you really friends with them? I'm friends with them. But it's like it's a standing joke. Like, how many best friends can you have?
Correct.
You can only have a few.
Correct.
I don't think you can have one, but you can have a few.
Correct.
But you can have a lot of friends.
Yes.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay.
Because if you have a lot of friends, it's a good thing, right?
I'm married to someone who has 8 really close friends, right? And they literally catch up on calls and everything else very frequently. All that shit seems alien to me because I have one best friend sitting in Singapore, right? And the last time, I spoke to him yesterday, but that was over a WhatsApp message, right? So we haven't met each other. I think we met each other 3 times over the last 4 years since we shifted there. Since my wedding, sum total, I met him 3 times, right? That's why I find this. I mean, I'm also surrounded by people who seem to have a lot of close friends who they're always hanging out with. And I'm like, my best friend is my PlayStation. But yes, I have a lot of friends.
Yeah. There's another thing to this, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about friendships because I used to be a person who would want to be liked by everybody, which made me want to be friends with everybody.
Same.
Till I realized that it's just the overwhelming pressure of being liked, wanting to be liked, just become too much, and I'm still trying to find a way
To balance.
because in my head it's like either you are liked by everybody or you're an asshole who doesn't want anybody to like you. So there was no there's never been a middle area, and I'm trying to find that middle area. That is literally my brief to my therapist most times. I want to figure a way to get this middle ground of being I am nice, but I am like not a people pleaser. But what I want to kind of tap onto is that it's also what you do with your friends doesn't have to be sharing all the things in your life. Like I have found a simple method to have that group of friends and me have constant engagement. We have an Instagram group and a WhatsApp group. We just share memes and stupid videos. Our friendship is as strong as it ever can be because of that. We don't have to share deep things in our lives. And that's our friendship. And I think it can be different for different people, but I think you got to find your methods, has been my realization.
I'll ask you even tougher question, I think. I don't know, or a worse question. How essential are friendships?
I feel friendships are... Okay, I'll break it into 2 parts. The broader friendships, I believe, are essential because...
That's human connection.
You need that. I mean, it's scientifically studied that the core foundation of happiness in life is human connection.
Yeah.
But what your friendship is when the closest rung,
Hmm.
I don't think that needs to be defined as a singular piece. I think it's a personality piece. Like I'm a person who wants to be liked by everybody else, want to be friendly with everybody in the world. My wife Pooja is like, I have a core set of a few people I've known since school who are my closest friends, and that's who she shares stuff with, and they don't have rules around that.
Hmm.
I think it's very individual. I don't think you can be truly happy without someone you can trust as a friend, no holds barred.
Hmm.
It could be one, it could be 5, 10, but I do think you need someone.
I think in my life that's my wife.
Same.
This is a literally best friend.
Yeah.
And luckily my brother.
Hmm.
With whom I have a completely different relationship. But then yeah, it's a lot of business talk as well.
Yeah.
And life talk and tech talk and hobby talk and everything else. Yeah.
I want to flip this to a bit of a flashback because you and I was telling the team that you and I had an extended pre-chat for this podcast over
Barely,
WhatsApp
yeah.
since the 6th of Jan.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It started in 6th of Jan. We're recording this, I think, mid-Jan now. It's been a week, 10 days. And what I found interesting was just generally, I mean, tracing your journey from Andhra Pradesh, engineering, IIM, working FMCG, to at some point that shift to saying, no, this is what I really want to do. I remember this one thing you spoke about just in terms of just really following something that is your passion and kind of getting into that and making it your vocation. While I wanted to kind of trace how that journey happened, how that switch happened for you, I also want to understand how you changed as a person around the time when that switch happened.
So there was no switch, Varun. Okay, I've always been, I think since 9th standard, I've always been like this very stubborn person saying, I want to do this. Okay. I had a dream of being a pilot, which was very squashed very early because of eyesight, right? That to give up.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to do at 9th is I was obsessed with computers. So I wanted to get into basically processor design of some sort of a processor architecture design sitting in 9th standard, right? So then I realized I had to get really good at math. So I would take home tuition for math. I went from literally 0 to 100. And I remember all through engineering, all through 10, 11, 12, as we do back in Andhra, I was 100 on 100 for 7 years on the trot in math. I was obsessed with math, right? But somewhere during engineering is when I realized that shit is boring, because I realized that being like the the many friends groups that I was part of, and the fact that I really enjoyed the whole extracurricular side of things. So everybody's organized an event, right?
Yeah,
So I was head of sponsors. I would go pitching to companies, etc. And then I would also be at the side. I was head of design because I would always be the guy with the aesthetic sense, right? So I would be the Photoshop guy and I'd be doing sponsors, right? And like, holy shit, this is so much more fun than sitting with math and computers, right? So final year, I decided I have to give CAT, right? So took the CAT again, like obsession, no? So it's not like I took the CAT to like do IMs or whatever, right? It's very specific. I wanted FMCG marketing. Okay, so the IMs are just a means to an end, right? My brother was already doing. I mean, he was already at Asian Paints, working already in the sales side of things. So I think I had a bouquet of 3 to 4 companies that I wanted to work with. ITC was one of them. Colgate Palmolive was one of them, right? So I cracked it, got in. And I was so happy because those 2 years of B school are still some of my favorite phases of my life. I interned at ITC, and I finally started working with Colgate Palmolive as my first job offer, right? Part of upbringing, I think we are extremely competitive, and we are very number driven, right? So Colgate happened. 2 years into Colgate, I'm sitting somewhere in Banaras. I had this one conversation with my boss, which I have to tell you about. Okay, I was 25, and I was just being shipped off to Banaras. Basically, next day was my flight out after spending a year, just more than a year in Bombay, Vizag, and a whole bunch of other places for my graduate trainee time. Okay, so anyway, so the conversation with my boss went something like this. He's like, Joe, how old are you right now? I said, I'm 25. And he's like, when do you think you'll retire? I said, I was 25. I had never thought of it. Who the hell thinks of it, right? So I was like, I don't know, 50, 60. He's like, okay, he was 35 then, and he was like, it'll be 60, you will have kids, you will have EMIs and everything else. Realistically, about 65 or so. Okay. I was like, okay, I guess that must be it. And he's like, so get this, you have more time in your career than all the time you spent on planet Earth so far. He like just amass all the memories, all the personality traits, every high, every low. You have all of that and more in the years to come in your career. He's like, so the first thing I want you to do is I don't want you to go to Banaras and think what is the short-term impact that I'm going to have, what are the next role that I'm going to take up, and what is the next role after that. He's like, it's immaterial because after 15 years you'll be 40, and he's like, no matter whether I'm your boss or you're working in this company, as an IM grad, you're going to be the director of some firm or the other. Yeah. At 40, you are going to be. Yeah. And he's like, from 40 till 60, you'll be a director. Yeah. He's like, because a minuscule percentage get to see you. So he's like, what the hell are you going to do spending so much time being a director when you could, he's like, spend these 15 years, go into the depth of it, of each role, rather than just getting as many roles as possible. Very nice advice, career advice, right? But I took the train. I wasn't even flying to Banaras. I took the train to Banaras, got in. Whole night I was thinking of only one thing. I was like, his advice transliterated to me as something else entirely. I was like, I'm 25. I have 35 years of career left. So even if I fuck up the next 5 years, nothing will happen. Okay. I was like, this is a free pass at life, right? And the funniest thing, Varun, is I was doing that job because with all my heart, I wanted it. I was exactly where I wanted to be in life. I was in Banaras selling toothpaste, which is the stupid stuff of my dreams. Okay. And I don't know why that was a dream, but it is a dream, right? So, and I was meeting my sales targets. It was a really nice high to get that number. All the tension, tears, and like lots of drama happened. Like everything you see in Mirzapur amplified to 100 times was my life in Banaras. Okay. Right? But it's okay. I was just thinking I can do whatever I want with my life. That's literally what Shobits told me is what I was thinking in my head. Okay. It took me a year to crack what I wanted to do with my life. Okay. But at the end of that year, I was crystal clear that there's nothing I can do to change my career trajectory because I was stuck with this IM tag. But I can change the people I work with. Right. So I started looking for interesting companies. That one of those interesting companies was a little design firm called Elephant Design in Pune. Yeah. One of the oldest in India. Right. And one of the directors had come to our B school for a chat. So I mailed them and said, I want to work with you guys. They were like, we literally don't have a B school grad in the company, but we'll create a role for you. Yeah. So I had like a 1 day long interview or more of a conversation, and we created a role around business development. And I started working with Elephant Design, which is a design firm. 1.5 years working with Elephant Design made me realize that there is no such thing as a career only. Really. I would, now that you work in the creative industry, we're in a room full of creatives, right? And the creative path for a career is very different. Like I would see people quitting to go to their gaon to become a sculptor, right? I was like, how is that sustainable? That's the first question I would ask. Exactly, what is your CTC going to look like? Like, boss, we don't know all this. But my life is going to be fulfilling if I do these sculptures. I was like, okay, that's interesting. That is how wedding photography happened to me, right? It happened with a whole bunch of other things. My sister's wedding, me finding that genre of wedding photography. But overall, when you say switch in thinking, there was never a switch, right? I chanced upon wedding photography, but it was a means to a different end. The end was to do whatever the hell I wanted to free up my time. Yeah. I still can't say I've freed up my time, but now I am at a stage where, Friday I can just randomly come to Andheri, or like Thursday I can be sitting playing God of War Ragnarok, right? Yes, when gigs are there, yeah. Right? But I can decide to do what I want to do, when I want to do. That was the thinking back then. Yeah. What happened with wedding photography though? I mean, for the next, it was never a part of the plan. It's one of the few things which I can tell you that happened to me that I did not anticipate any of this.
It's something you said in that story, and I think it's interesting. I think we all have those moments. Right? I think that conversation for you was that moment. I can trace a few of those for me as well. But I feel it's always about that point when it's like someone's feeding you data thinking that you will infer it a certain way, but they can never really understand how you will kind of get that data and think about things.
What is your conclusion from it, rather? What your
I think
take?
the conclusion is you should get in as much data as possible. Has always been my thing. Like, because you never know what will resonate with you. Like, weirdly, this is something that happened more recently, right? What, 2020 pandemic hits, I was on a trajectory, built a company, sold it, have brought it to a level being acquired, set myself for like a global career as this person in the whole ad industry, all that stuff. Very set for that life. Pandemic hits, one of the main projects I was working for kind of went on to pause. And I feel many ways the show kind of comes from the fact that pause really kind of helped me as well. It just, they happened to just start consuming content around stoicism. And one book, which is called 4,000 Weeks, which basically says that we all on an average have 4,000 weeks in our lives. And so it's not about managing your time, it's about what you do in it. And really sat down and said, is this what I want to do? I said, I was not even 40 then, I'm 40 now. I'm like, is this what I want to do? I'm a father, I have the life I've always wanted, but I'm not satisfied, not fulfilled. You know what I mean?
Fulfilled.
So when am I truly fulfilled? And so I sat down, worked with someone to really do a purpose exercise and realized one of the core things for me is having conversations and really like sharing stuff with people was always my thing. I'm like, how can I do more of that? And I was already doing podcasting as a side gig.
Oh.
And I was like, why can't this be my main gig? Why can't I just do this? But the data came from random places. I don't think it came from a singular source. But I think for you, it's more like focused, like it came from one source and it led you down that path. So we always have to listen to what is happening around us because you never know where that might lead you.
Correct. So, yes, firstly, I think 2020, a lot of us realized the finiteness of life.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not so much everybody, it's not gloom and doom. Yes, it was, to be fair, for a lot of folks, but for those who were privileged enough to get through it, the best effect of it was that pause led to people thinking, oh my god, I have only this much of life to go. So and it really allowed people to zoom out and to see things in chunks. I think if you did that, it is the best outcome of it, because we are so micromanaging our lives that we never get the time to zoom out. We had a lot of time to zoom out when we were in engineering, when we were back in education times, right? Lots of time to zoom out and wonder what about life ahead. But once you've hit 35-ish, right? You're not, I don't know how many times you actually get actively the time to just sit and think, what do the next 10 years look like? You're already the boss here. Nobody's asking you that question. What do your next 5 years? Where do you see yourself 5 years?
Growing this.
Nobody's asking this, right? So 2020 helped us to actually sit back and think of those things, like stupid things. Like 2020, when the first lockdown happened, I think that question hit my wife and I really hard. And we saw it like, get a dog. Spend more time at home. Don't do frivolous travel, right? Or rather, spend more time together, which became with the dog, which means at home, right? I mean, we did do a late trip with the dog just now, but other than that, but yeah, just this ability to zoom out, which we were taught a lot in our 20s, it slowly disappears off in your 30s, which leads to, I think, a lot of regret in your 50s. Okay, I see a lot of cynical 50-year-olds and late 40-year-olds who would have done so much more. I at no point do I want to say I'm grateful for the pandemic. Those are words that should never come out.
Agreed.
But I'm grateful for the fact that we were blessed enough during the pandemic that we got to think about the right things. Right? 100%. Because without that pause of even those 3 months, it's a freaking luxury.
And priorities got straightened out, right? You knew
So
what
much.
you wanted to focus on.
So much. I mean, thank God that the business survived, right? Because I had never heard the term. For me, runways were always associated with airports and not businesses. But I heard that a lot during 2020, right? But we survived, and we are so much better off at the other end, because now we know that instead of not just the business aspect of things, we know that for each and every person that works with us, we're hoping to build better lives over the next 15-20 years. Hopefully.
There's another aspect to that, right? Is that when you start focusing on the small things, and I've always liked to talk about small things, I've realized that when you map out and say what are the things that make, and I'd start. So 2 things happened for me during that period was that one is I thankfully bought a mic at home. So I continued to podcast from home. And suddenly it came from a group activity to a solitary activity, doing it with someone across a screen. And secondly, I just started spend time doing small things which I had never really focused on. It's like making a cup of coffee or like just sitting and doing just like random stuff. You have a kid at home, you have a 3-year-old at home at that point of time. Just keep her engaged because she's at home and she's like, if we are bored, imagine a 3-year-old, like what the hell is going on, right? It just made me value those, just kind of like hold. I feel that the problem was that we were also running at such a pace. And I think we're back to running at that pace in most cases.
Yeah.
You never got to like hold back and actually observe where you are right now, which I feel is also something that came about because of it. And I feel it happened for everybody. Like, I've had people who moved to Goa for an extended period of time, lived there, and decided to work out of there. They've all kind of gone back.
Correct.
But I think that period also gave them that level of clarity in terms of what they wanted to do in life, etc.
I think as long as that place led to that pause led to conscious decision making, it was the right place to be.
Yeah.
It was not all hunky dory though. I know that a lot of folks who who basically realized that the life they were leading is not the life they wanted to lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
I mean, both personally as well as professionally, right? But I am okay with that because at least it would mean on the other side was they're leading the life they have chosen for themselves, which is not that easy.
Yeah.
There was also, I'm just going to tell you this, but going back to the story I was telling you about the shifts, right?
Yeah.
When I was in Banaras, one of the stupid things that you're going to laugh at this, okay? I read Chetan Bhagat's convocation address to Symbiosis Institute. Okay, he was never that back then. Also, he was part of our jokes on our B school groups, etc.
Yeah.
But I was reading that, and I was like, the funniest thing I took away from that, I was like, dude, 10 years later, I want to be giving the convocation speech. I want to do something so cool that I don't know what that thing is, but I want to do. Okay, and when I was quitting Elephant, picking up wedding photography, my friend from B school called me and she's like, so Joe, is this how you're going to get to do your convocation speech? I was like, yes. And like, okay. She's like, so how the hell does wedding photography lead you to do? I said, I don't know, but I have a feeling it will. This was in 2010.
Yeah.
Literally, I did shoot her wedding as well. But yeah, that was the question. Random shit.
Speaking of random shit, although they're not random at all, I find them to be the best things about all of us as people, is that there is stuff that we always do beyond what is profession that is always exciting to do. I think one of my first interactions with you was on Twitter when you are, I would like to say you're very passionate in your words around cricket. A lot of this, you're obsessed with it. I feel that I look forward to your tweets and Harsha Bhogli's tweets around cricket at most times when a match is going on. I was reading your point on KL Rahul, which I have an entirely long perspective on. But there are things, there's gaming, there is cricket. Do you feel like all of these kind of add into what you do as a professional? Do you feel they add in somewhere to that?
I think forget as professionals, as humans, we need avenues to think, to critically think. Okay, that's the right word. Critically think, right? Consuming doesn't let you critically think. Unless you are at the end of every movie, you're sitting down, breaking open a notepad and saying things I learned from this movie. Then you're okay, I'm sorry, but like you're
that film school student who everybody that is first semester film school. Okay, the worst thing that film school teaches you is that sit and critically analyze.
Enjoy
scene.
the damn movie.
No, so the first semester we all thought we have to do this. Sat in that room and be like, what is mise-en-scène? And I'm like, what is? Oh my god, did I do this for this? And you would go back into movies and you would hear about like things from some of these professors who would talk about an instance, and they would kind of take meaning out of it, which I'm 100% sure in hindsight, the filmmaker had zero fucks to give for what happened. But this guy's like, no, see that splash of... I remember my favorite line. Let's say, there's a professor who told us that Dil Chahta Hai has this scene where Akshay Khanna flicks paint.
Across the canvas.
And our professor said that is him unleashing his... It's almost like masturbation on his friends for the way he's held back, oppressed as a person. And in hindsight, I'm thinking like, फूक रहा था मेरा
Over
प्रोफेसर.
analysis max it is. No, but I'm just saying, like, there's consumption, which is basically scrolling through reels or whatever shit. There's 12 hours of Netflix binging, and there's activities that will make you critically think, right? For me, that is cricketing and gaming, right? It has very little to do with movies. I mean, yes, I have a very strong interest in filmmaking, right? But I'm like, I'm okay. Sometimes I'll just enjoy a random shit show like Black Adam, for example. I'll just enjoy it. It's fine. It's made for entertainment. Just treat it as it is. But cricket is my place for critical thinking, right? So I really think that it's like in your, again, back to 20s versus 30s, as this year I turned 40. Okay. Again, the older you grow, the less things you actually think about. Right? Because you become this like if your mind is 100 pieces, not 100 pieces, it's 100 parts, right? I think in your 30s at least 90% of it is just occupied by one thing, which is your work, right? 10% with family, etc. But when you're young, you have so many random hobbies, and more importantly, in this era, in the 2020s, it's like if you have a hobby, immediately first thing is how do I monetize it? Right? What do I? No, you don't, bro. Just do your damn hobby, right? Like, and again, fingers are pointed to idiots like us. You are the guys who's turned a podcast into a business, right? I'm the guy who's a wedding photographer, right? Oh, you photography is hobby. Now you're making money, right? Totally different things, right? So, and it's not like I actively sought out, okay, now that I'm doing wedding photography as a business, what other hobbies can I do? No, bollocks, right? This is just, okay, advice I could give is don't lose sight of the things that kept you really, really obsessed with in your teens, right? Cricket was one of them. It was massive for me. I would have two books that I would maintain. One for Sachin's stats and India's test stats overall. So that at the end of, before the match began, I would knew exactly where Sachin stood. So I was like this idiot who would be like, if Sachin scores 157 today, he will cross 59 average. And got out on 40, right? There's no doubt about it, right? And I would have this. So and this
You
is
were that kid.
I was that kid.
You were that kid.
I was that kid. I had a scratchbook, newspaper clippings. I had that as well. And when my granddad threw it away, I was like, but it's okay. But
I was that kid with music and movie trivia. Like I would have information about where something was shot, what space was reused. I'm like, once the same building from that movie, or like this is when this song came out, who shot that video. I was that kid. So I totally understand. Trivia is so underrated, no? In terms of just
I'm critical thinking, right? Basically, I don't know what the science behind it is, but if I view the brain as a exercise, like a muscle, it really needs to keep moving so that the next time you are presented with a problem, you will find multiple solutions to solve it, right? Not just one pathway that you are. I loved the case studies we used to do back in B school, right? Because they would all be just an example of how can 60 people think of 50 different solutions to this, right? And I would always be the guy with the opinion like, no, that's wrong, right? But anyway, back to this. You need something that makes you think, right? I think, and the easiest way is gaming. The easiest way, because you're actually solving puzzles and problems that somebody else has created for an adult person to do. Right? If you can't think of it, just pick up video gaming if you can. I think it's great. It's an entire industry that seems to be in a subculture when it's not really. It makes more money than the whole of Hollywood. But still it's a subculture. I don't get it.
So I had this weird stint with gaming, I think after the first lockdown, when I used to be a PC gamer, and then I lost touch with it and then never got back to it. So I'm like, after first lockdown, I'm like, I'm going to buy myself a console. Bought the PS3. Then I realized all the games I want to play are violent. And then again, you have a 4-year-old at home running around. I'm like, I can't play. So I played a few games and I gave it up. My thing for this is to find... I'm a fact junkie with pop culture. And that's what I bounce off when I try to connect the dots of things and stuff like that. When you said critical thinking, I was thinking about this. I'm like, think about cricket, think about gaming, think about all these things. All of these teach you to figure out random dots you can join to come in. Like, I'm just going broader in that sense. And that doesn't help you just professionally, but also helps you understand people, helps you understand different personalities, right? Okay, you're joining the dots of watching this person has this small tick here or this is a mannerism there. You're joining those together and doing that. And I feel gaming is a great expression of just like a human. You're almost having a human experiment without actual humans
Yes.
to understand how humans will behave. That's at least my outside analysis without being a gamer. I'm sure you have a deeper analysis.
Firstly, I love single player games today. I used to be a multiplayer PC person. I'm very much console, PlayStation 5, right? But the reason I love single player games so much today, like the best of them at least, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, uh, Horizon Zero Dawn, or The Last of Us, in the last 5 years, these are all these are epic, like these are masterpieces made over 5 to 7 years by somebody. Like there's a music composer, there's a writer, there is, for every little bit of that, there is a small movie that plays out over a 20-minute side quest, which somebody's went into painstaking detail to make. And a whole bunch, like 300 400 people have sat and developed that game, right? That's the first thing that attracts me, because I'm like, that's the coolest thing about it. Because I don't know, I mean, some films claim that they're being made for 7 years, which is not true, right? But filmmaking is not even close to that. It's a much more rushed affair. It's far more commercially driven. Yes, gaming is also commercially driven, but they do understand that for something to be a critical success, you need to spend and devote that amount of time. So I'm at a juncture in my life where, looking back at the last 15 years, I realize that most things I've done have been short term, or short-term joy rather, right? Weddings are also a classic example of that to me. Yes, they compound over time, but they're all projects which start like 15-20 days before the wedding, when I first have a client call to, and they finish 15-20 days after wedding. So at best a 30-day project, right? With 3 to 4 days of extreme highs. I can't remember the last time I did a 1 year project, a 2 year one, a 3 year one. 2 years was B school, 4 years was engineering, which I sucked at, right? I really can't, like, even this podcast that I'm sitting with you on, right? These are also like that, right? They're episodes that give us, there's a lot of, this is not instant gratification, but I'm just looking at it as life.
Yeah.
It is instant gratification.
Yeah.
You're going to get the high of this gets shared, people will comment, tweet and all that, and chapter close, next high, chapter close, next high.
Yeah.
How is it to live a 5 to 7 year cycle, to dedicate what is 10% of your adult life to one thing?
So
I am fascinated by that. So
I think there are two categories in this, right? One is films, which has all the reason. So I've always been asked, do you ever want to be a director? And I've always said no.
okay.
Because I started off out of film school saying I want to be, I was one of the few people who came out and said, I want to be a producer. Which is not something people would say, director. Because I'm like, I don't know if I can last a 5-year, 2-year journey in one thing. A producer can do multiple things. So I will at least jump from one to the other, was my thought process. Because I at that time had self-diagnosed myself as ADD, but I don't have ADD. I was later, Sigmund Freud happened to me. The aspect that I found, at least I've inferred from this, is in a podcast for me, and there's something Tanmay asked me a while ago. Tanmay and I did a podcast, I think mid 2020. And he said, what would you do for the rest of your life for no money? And he said, make YouTube videos. And I said, I would do podcasts. Because for me, a podcast is an ability for me to meet someone and have a conversation with them. It's not about the creation of it. Like for me, and which I've always wanted to have someone to do the other part of the work, is that once you hit record and you stop hitting record, my job in this needs to be done. Like, I don't want to master it. I don't look at the edit. I never look at the edits. And I feel for direction was that thing, right? You're not only spending 2 years on a project, you are reiterating, getting back into it. And I'm like, I cannot. I think I would just be like, in my head, I think I'd be bored out of my head. But I feel it also requires a certain level of focused obsession, which I don't think I have. So a podcast is simpler. I think a 2-3 year on project is something else altogether.
I was smiling because two things. Firstly, that question that Tanvi asked is exactly what I asked Devika. And I've asked a lot of people since the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was like, if making a living was not in consideration, what would you be doing? And I can tell you this with certainty, Varun, because I've ask this question to everybody from 14 to 40, right? 90% of people have no clue. They have no clue because life is a stream, okay, and there's a strong current. It's a very strong. It's there is doesn't matter where you live, even if you live in the Himalayas or something like that. You're still it is still a stream, right? You're still living a path that was designed for you by somebody else with well intentions, with good intentions, a well intentioned path. End of the day, but we are all built different. We were all born different, right? I don't think we've never had, because that question leads you to very complex other sub questions, saying that with the biggest one of them being, what the hell do I want for my life?
Yeah.
Big ass answer, right? But not talking generics, coming back to me, I've been blessed with clarity of thought. Okay. So like math, I don't know where it came from. I don't know whether it's a trait from my mother, my dad, or neither, but it's always been there. Okay. So which means that I often see complex problems as, no big deal to kind of thing. There's an obvious answer. It may not be the prettiest of them all, but there's an obvious answer, right? So I'm laughing because I legit asked that question lots of times to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your answer to it?
It changed a lot. It has nothing to do with something to do. It's the way I want to live my life.
I couldn't agree more.
I just want to live my life with the people I love, and want more time doing that. It could be, the doing bit is immaterial. We could be in a boat, we could be sitting. It doesn't matter. The time you spend with the people you love, I think, is what it comes down to. For me, at least. It may be a completely different answer to somebody else, and I have no grudges against that. Right? It has nothing to do with photography. It's an optional little side quest in life. Okay, but it's nothing to do with photography. The other thing is, I guess I am jealous of the people, in a way. It's a personal envy of the folks who can do long projects. I wonder how life would be.
Yeah.
That's why I'm constantly obsessed with thinking about that. I keep telling this to Joshua as well. I keep telling this to my teammates as well. What if? Right? What if we made something? What if we made a film? I don't know. But what if, like, I when I see Masan, for example, I know the producer. I have now shot the weddings of every single key cast member of Masan. it's a very, and it's been, Masan has been like this guiding light for me, because I'm like, one day I'll make something as evocative and as emotional and yet so subtle as that, because I really love it. It's this movie that is not art house cinema. It is very easy to understand, even for anybody who's not into cinema. They can just see it and walk away with pain, right? I love it, and it's such a well made film, and I'm like, one day aisa kuch karna hai, that's the thing. I don't know when. Maybe it's my 40s, which starts in a bit, or later.
No, 40s are interesting. I turned 40 and I suddenly had this moment of saying, okay, I need to think about, because I felt pressure of, you need to act your 40s, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I went through
When
that.
did you turn 40?
August.
Okay.
When you said about spending time and how your day is, it's bizarre. So today morning, I came across something I shared with my wife, and I've spoken about this a few times with her, and saying that, how do we design our ideal day? It should be what we aim for in our lives. And ideal day is not like, oh my God, I'm living in some French Alps or whatever. Like, I don't know, French Alps is the right thing. Swiss Alps, sorry, not French.
Both are there.
Same, whatever. But it's like, okay, how do I want to wake up? What do I want to do in the morning? What do I want to do in every day? What are the pieces that I want as a part of my day? And a lot of that involves time with yourself, time with friends and family, time for you to do. It could be a side quest. It could be something which you do as a profession. Doesn't even have to be that. I feel that mixture, once you come to that ideal mixture, if you can hit that mixture by your 40s, I think by mid 40s-ish, then you're heading somewhere where you're going to be fulfilled in life. But if you don't hit that by the time you're 50, then you're going to have what you said. You're going to have a lot of regrets for one thing. This is where I would have ideally wanted to be, but this is where I've kind of like held back on. Because I feel once you cross 50, then you have to find yourself. Those blocks have to be in your hand.
I know it's semantics, but would it be wrong for me to give some advice here? I don't think anybody should be designing their days. Okay? You should be designing your months, your quarters, and your years.
Okay.
Okay? Life is life is too vast to be designed on a day level because it causes a lot of angst for you if you miss something. Like I don't get this 10,000 step count,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, screw you, man. I know compounding hota hai and all that, but like tension mat dalo na. Like, there's enough shit in my life, right?
Yeah.
But like every time I'm given a goal, I like to break it up into a larger goal, right? So if you're, for example, if you do 2 walks a day, I'm like, I'll take a step back and say that in a month, if I do 45 walks is enough, right? It's 1.5 a day, right?
Yeah.
And if whoever is like physical therapist or whatever is telling me that, yeah, that's fine, suddenly it's made my life a lot better. Because at all points, last decade, I have lived my life in such a way that, I mean, I just told you the reason why I picked up wedding photography, right? I want to be able to live life on my own terms, which means the basic shit like, I want to nap right now, I'll nap. Okay.
Yeah.
It may not be programmed in my day.
Control over your time.
Correct. Not, we are spontaneous humans, yeah. I mean, it's like you want to nap at work on this Sunday, it's fine. But design your months is what I'll say, right? So that you know that Amma Nana will speak to your mom and dad like X amount of times. So you know, because I find that when you do days, right, there's a lot of guilt which I don't like, right? My PlayStation gives me a lot of guilt. Okay, I'm serious because I feel like, oh God, I have not gamed in so long, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't gamed for 8 months before I did Ragnarok, for example, right? Just the other day, kya? Day before yesterday, I sat and made an Excel sheet, as we all do, of the amount of work I have done at my desk. There's this very fancy desk setup I have at home. It has everything that you see on YouTube. Okay? Everything, every unnecessary peer pressure types it is. Okay, I put everything in that desk. Then I was like, I'm actually being productive. I'm actually using it. Turns out I've edited like more than 10,000 images in the last 1 year while sitting there. I don't have to edit images at my company, but I do it out of passion, right? I was like, okay, that's not bad. You know, I've made this. That's
You got ROI.
yes, ROI for everything. Right? I have not driven my car in a while, right? It's just the way life has been. I haven't like the whole thing. The reason I bought a car in 2021 was because I wanted to do a lot of road trips. And like the dog is here. Excuse.
Yeah,
okay. One trip I've done. It's now been 16 months. So now I know that's not happened. But again, don't put pressure on yourself to live your own life. That's why I've never been able to do a routine. I've never ever. I have friends who actually guilt trip me on that. They're like, because they are like, if I see their Instagram, mama, it's like next level tension for me. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., do the run, drop daughter, come back home, do 6 hours at office, then whatever, they'll have a weekly marathon thingy happening, and then they'll always end their day on Instagram with one motivational quote type situation. I'm like, can't do all that. Live life on your terms.
So the reason I said day is I feel that the blocks.
That's what I said. It could be semantics.
The blocks are the same. How much time they take might. Because
Differ.
I also don't like to add too many new things into my. I think I've come to that age where I'm like, I don't need to have newer experiences on some count. It's okay. I don't. Like it's like someone say, I want to go do one, like skydiving, diving, that kind of thing every year. I'm like, no, it's okay. But I'll find something which is more my thing. I'll find, okay, I'll learn one new thing every year at max. If at all I don't. So that's flexible. But it's more about, I want to wake up in the morning and make my own cup of coffee. That is literally one of the blocks. But I agree with you that the pressure of saying this is what I have to follow should not be the aim.
This because it results in guilt and resentment. Two things you don't want, right? There is enough guilt and resentment in life, man. Sorry, I'm going to randomly, for the audience who's tuning in, right?
Yeah.
Random piece of advice. I think we all should sit down and more than asking yourself, what do I want from life? I think you should ask yourself, what kind of person am I? Or rather, what kind of stuff really thrills me in life? What makes you, like you realize conversations keep you ticking, right? But that is a micro answer. I'm talking of one level above, where are you a person of scale or are you a person of one task that, the one achievement in life, right? Because if you're a person of scale, then I think stuff like having a daily routine really helps. Stuff like having a packed calendar really helps. Right? You're an entrepreneur who loves doing 10,000 things at once. Goody for you. Right? But at least I hope it's a conscious decision, because if you're able to root it down to saying that my satisfaction, contentment, happiness, fulfillment, everything is not coming, maybe this is one of your answers. Right? I have very quickly realized, thanks to 2020, 2021, I'm not a person of scale. I'm happy doing my 10 weddings. There are 4 other directors at Stories who do 10 more, right? And together we do about 40 weddings a year. But it's still a Chotu boutique firm. We're not making waves in any way in terms of the scale aspect of things. We're making waves in other ways, right? But I cannot see myself running a 500 employee organization where my time as a CEO is like fully packed. So when you asked me when I can turn up for this, I was a very vague answer, because I was like, I knew my whole month is free. Okay. Last wedding I shot was December 20th. Next wedding I shoot is Jan 20th. I had 30 days off, sitting at home. Right? Devika looked at me and she's like, you're 30 days off. I'm like, but do I really? I don't want, I want to own my time. There's this a really cool YouTube video where Casey Neistat reads out a poem by a certain somebody while sitting on the riverside in
I remember that one.
a tuxedo, right?
Yeah,
About time.
About saying no. How we're also worried to say
Yes.
no. And I forget what he reads out, but I remember that vividly. There's a rocks
It's
in
a
the
poem.
beach in LA. He's sitting on that and he's talking about it. Should link it up when we put this episode out.
I'll find it for you. I'll send it to you. It's
No,
my
I know,
favorite
I
one.
visually remember it because I saved it somewhere.
Because, dude, we don't like saying no is one aspect of it. Casey is talking about saying no to others, right? I'm talking of saying no to yourself. Because we're very tempted. Like somebody else will tell you could be running 3 companies. Okay, let me do it. There was a time in my life where I was running 3 companies. Okay, I had sleep paralysis. I would wake up, I would be counting my flights on Instagram, and everybody thought that it was either a show off or it was some. In reality, it was just me dreading the next flight. Okay, because the flight would land, I literally wouldn't wake up. I had no way to wake up, like because I'd be short on sleep, whatever it is. I was clocking about 180, 190 flights a year, just because of the sheer number of gigs I would be doing. Right, and this isn't just weddings. I had a whole conference. I had a photography conference till 2019, the last of which had 2,000 people in a room, the largest photography conference this side of the world. We haven't done it in 3 years. The pandemic really made me question why I am doing what I'm doing, right? Now I'm happy. Like, find little things.
In my head, we were winding up the conversation, but what you just said made me really think. When you're functioning at scale, and that's a question I've asked myself, because I have functioned at scale. You go from 2 people in an apartment to running a company of 500-600 people over a 14-year stretch, and then you leave. It's like muscle memory now for me. It's to go back to scale. It's like, and I'm holding myself back, saying when you go at scale, you don't enjoy tiny nuances. Yeah, you don't. You don't. You don't feel the texture once you cross a certain scale. After that, you're looking at it's like if you take an art analogy, you're looking at the painting, but you don't feel its texture. You can't look. You can't feel the paint.
But you're answerable to yourself. Like if you want scale, fine, go for it. Just know that you wanted it. That's all I'm saying, right? I don't think each of us like stress on that fact. Yeah. But then I will come back that this all comes with this massive privilege
of being able to make that choice.
Yes, of being able to make that choice, 100%, and of being one of the best at what you do. When you are creating something, conventional logic says that you need to create a lot of those somethings to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you're creating the best of something, you don't have to make a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? You can charge whatever you want. And I don't just mean that in terms of money. Obviously, it's money is the first thing, but it's also time. Right? You can choose to do a few of those somethings then. That's where I'm coming. That is the privilege. Okay. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about how a lot of us just approach creativity as a job, and that is fine too. That is fine too. But those who don't and do this almost like this is that ikigai wala all madness, full obsession, sab kuch dal do. then if you're doing all of that, then if you're not really making headway at being, so sadly speaking, objectively better than your peers,
Yeah.
right? Then you are not able to do the best of what you should be able to do. You should be able to do, if you are at that stage, you should be able to do lesser and lesser work, is my personal opinion.
You mentioned Casey Neistat. He has his brother who's Van Neistat,
Oh yeah.
who I feel is such a perfect example of this. He's just so, I feel, well, Casey is operating at scale even as an individual. I mean, I don't think anything which Casey does is feels small. Everything feels large. But Van teaches you about how to look at the tinier nuances of things. The fact that he'll build his own studio. The fact that he has this thing. And the more I'm talking to you, the more I've realized that it's not about your off time and on time. Like you say, you have off work for a month, but that is actually technically when you're on, because work at some point becomes work. That's when you have to go off of the stuff that really kind of like captivates you. It's that 1 month which you have off is actually when you might have actually been the most on.
Yeah.
Because you've actually allowed your mind to think and kind of recharge batteries.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think some of us are built for finding the small texture wala bits. Some of us are built to make lots of cloth.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. It's just be conscious of it is all I'm saying. The only way you'll get there is by doing both. And that's fine, because that means that by the time you hit your late 30s, early 40s, you'd have hopefully figured out which of these two things you want. Right? Which also goes back to the idea of having hobbies that we were initially talking about. Right? I find it fascinating that you had a side hustle. I've never been able to have one. I've tried many times. I've tried to turn my PC building into a side hustle. Didn't happen, right? My affinity to social media, like literally promoting brands and being an influencer bit, is also, I would say, middling at best. It's I mean, I should be doing so much more, but I don't. I'm at peace with the fact that I'm the one-track person, right? I'm wedding photographer. Occasionally, I'm filmmaker for brands, but I'm wedding photographer. I'm happy pouring everything into that. So the next 10 years for me is going to be about finding even more texture, as you're saying, right? Go deeper, do more in wedding photography. God knows what is out there, but if Zendaya and Tom Holland are getting married, maybe they should talk.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that's a great note to wind up today's conversation. If you're a listener, Zendaya and Tom Holland, definitely you know who to call, is how I'd put it. And I always like to leave a conversation at a point where both me and hopefully you and the audience are like, okay, we want to hear you guys talk longer. And so I always leave enough for part 2, is how I put it. So I can't wait for that. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was fun.